Let's toast to Lisa, the queen of the house, someone shouted, and the crowd erupted in cheers. I leaned against the wall in the next room, invisible to the party guests. My back ached from another 12-hour shift, but I smiled to myself, glad that Lisa's birthday was turning out well. She deserved it, after everything I had sacrificed to keep our family comfortable. Then I heard it, her laugh. Not the soft, warm chuckle I'd fallen in love with, but something sharp, almost cruel. You know, she said, her voice rising above the music and chatter. If he wasn't so busy playing superhero, he might actually notice how pathetic he is. The room fell quiet for a second before someone responded. Seriously, Lisa? You're terrible. A few nervous laughs followed. No, really? Lisa said, laughing harder now. The man is killing himself working 2 jobs for Emily, and he doesn't even realize. She stopped, either to catch her breath or because she'd seen me step into the doorway. The sound of glass shattering snapped everyone's attention to me. A tray of empty champagne flutes had slipped from a waiter's hands, but I barely noticed. My focus was on Lisa, her face, frozen mid-laugh, as she realized I was standing there. I don't realize what? I asked, loud enough for the room to hear. My voice was calm, steady, but inside, something primal churned. I wanted answers. Lisa recovered quickly, plastering on her hostess' smile. Oh, you startled me, babe. Nothing. Just joking around. Joking about what? I stepped closer, watching her falter. Just, ugh. Don't be so dramatic. It was nothing. Everyone jokes about their husbands. It's normal. She waved her hand dismissively, trying to move past me. But I didn't budge. Normal, huh? I glanced around the room. A few guests avoided my gaze, shuffling awkwardly toward the door. If it's nothing, Lisa, let's hear the joke. Her smile slipped. Can we not do this right now? It's my birthday. Exactly. It's your birthday. Let's celebrate with the truth, I said, my voice dropping low enough that only she could hear the next words. Unless you're too much of a coward. That did it. Her eyes flashed, and her whisper came fast and sharp. You really want to have this conversation? Here? Fine. Maybe you should stop acting like some overworked martyr and look in the mirror. You're not the saint you think you are. She tried to walk away, but I grabbed her wrist. Not hard, just enough to stop her. What are you hiding, Lisa? Let go of me, she hissed, pulling free. She turned back to the party, her smile snapping back into place like a mask. Everyone, please enjoy yourselves. I'll be right back. She grabbed my arm and dragged me into the kitchen, slamming the door behind us. For a second, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was louder than the muffled music outside. What is it, Lisa? I asked again. What's the big secret that everyone in that room seems to know but me? Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at the floor, at the ceiling, anywhere but at me. When she finally spoke, her voice was a whisper. You don't want to know. The words were so soft, so deliberate, that they chilled me more than any scream could have. I leaned in, my voice dropping to match hers. Try me. She bit her lip, her eyes darting toward the door as though calculating how much time she had before someone came looking for her. It's not what you think, she began, but I cut her off. You don't know what I think because you've been lying to me, I said. Now tell me, Lisa, or I'll go back out there and ask one of your friends. Her head snapped up, panic flashing across her face. But then, just as quickly, it was gone. She stepped closer to me, her expression shifting into something almost smug. Fine, she said. You really want to ruin my birthday, huh? Go ahead. Let's talk about Emily. I froze. Something about the way she said my daughter's name made my blood run cold. Lisa saw the hesitation and pressed forward. You think you're so clever, don't you? So noble. Always working yourself to the bone for her. But maybe you should have asked yourself a long time ago why she doesn't look anything like you. The room spun. My breath hitched, and for a moment, I felt like I couldn't move. What are you saying? She laughed again. That sharp, cruel sound I now realized I had been too blind to hear all these years. Oh, come on. You're not stupid. You've done the math by now, right? Or do I need to spell it out for you? I didn't respond. Couldn't. But the silence didn't stop her. If anything, it made her bolder. She leaned in close, her voice dripping with venom. She's not yours, Mark. Never was. The words hung in the air, slicing through me like a blade. My hands trembled at my sides, fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. Lisa just stood there, arms crossed, wearing that smug, satisfied look, like she just won some twisted game I didn't even know I was playing. "You're lying," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Am I?" She shot back. "You really think you're the victim here, Mark? You've been so busy playing hero that you didn't even notice the cracks right in front of you. Don't make me out to be the bad guy for finally saying what everyone else already knows." "Everyone else?" My voice was louder now, steady despite the chaos raging inside me. "Who the hell are you talking about, Lisa? Who knows? Tell me right now." Lisa smirked, a small, cruel twist of her lips. "Oh, you'd be surprised. Some of them were at this party, smiling at you while they whispered behind your back." I took a step toward her and she backed up instinctively. "Name them," I demanded, the words cutting through the air like a whip. "Right now. Who are you talking about?" She laughed, a low, humorless sound. "You think I'm just going to hand you the answers? Grow up, Mark. You've spent years letting other people make a fool of you, and you didn't even realize it." I stood there, staring her down, trying to make sense of the venom in her voice. This wasn't the Lisa I thought I knew. Or maybe it was, and I'd just been too blind to see it all along. Every moment we'd shared, every smile, every kiss, every late-night conversation, felt like it had been rewritten in real time, revealing something darker, uglier beneath the surface. "Why now?" I asked, my voice quieter but no less sharp. "Why say this now, of all times?" She shrugged, her nonchalance stoking the fire in my chest. "Why not? You're so desperate for the truth, aren't you? Here it is. Emily isn't yours. She never was. And guess what, Mark? I'm not sorry. Not for that, not for any of it." The room seemed to tilt for a moment, the weight of her words crushing down on me. But then, something inside me snapped into place. Cold, calculating clarity. I wasn't going to break. Not here, not in front of her. If she wanted to play games, I'd make damn sure I was the one who finished them. I straightened up, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "Fine," I said, the single word steady and deliberate. "You want me to know the truth? I'll get it myself." Her smirk faltered, just for a second, before she masked it with indifference. "Good luck with that," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I'm sure you'll find out all kinds of interesting things." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there. I didn't trust myself to stay in that room another second. I was too close to losing control. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The guests were still mingling in the living room, the noise of their conversations grating against my raw nerves. I didn't stop to say goodbye. I didn't stop for anything. I grabbed my coat, stepped out the front door, and got into my car. The engine roared to life, but I didn't drive off right away. Instead, I sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tightly it felt like my hands might break. My mind raced, replaying every moment, every word. Lisa's smirk, her venomous laugh, the way she'd so casually ripped apart everything I thought I knew. She thought this was the end of the conversation. She thought she'd won. But she didn't realize something had shifted in me. I wasn't the fool she thought I was, not anymore. As I pulled out of the driveway, my jaw tightened with resolve. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd show her just how far I was willing to go to uncover every secret she thought she'd buried. The drive home was silent, but inside my head, it was chaos. Every word Lisa had said rang in my ears like a relentless echo. "She's not yours. She never was." Those 6 words had ripped through me like a hurricane, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. But I wasn't just broken, I was calculating. I didn't go straight into the house when I got home. Instead, I sat in the car, staring blankly at the dashboard. My thoughts were dark, spinning into a storm I couldn't contain. I needed answers, but not from Lisa. I couldn't trust a single word out of her mouth now. If Emily wasn't mine, I had to know the truth. Who was? Inside, the house was quiet, too quiet. Lisa must have stayed at the party, basking in the laughter and drinks, thinking she'd won. It gave me the perfect opportunity. I went straight to her office. Lisa wasn't the most careful person, and I knew she kept everything, emails, receipts, even passwords, somewhere in that room. Her arrogance had always been her weakness. She never believed I'd have the guts to dig into her secrets. I pulled open drawer after drawer, sifting through papers, credit card statements, and old notebooks. I found nothing at first, but then a folded piece of paper fell from the back of a folder labeled taxes. It wasn't a tax document. It was a birth certificate. Emily's. I stared at it, my heart pounding in my chest. Everything looked normal until I got to the father section. The box where my name should have been was blank. My stomach dropped, my mind racing with possibilities. Why leave it empty? Was she trying to hide something? Or was this just the start of the trail? I shoved the certificate into my pocket and kept digging. My hands trembled, anger surging through me like a second heartbeat. And then I found it. A series of old photos tucked inside a dusty album. They weren't of us. They weren't of Emily. They were of Lisa with another man, his arm draped casually over her shoulder, both of them smiling in a way I hadn't seen from her in years. I didn't recognize him. He wasn't from her work, and he certainly wasn't one of our friends. Who the hell was he? My mind raced as I pieced together the timeline. These pictures were dated just a year before Emily was born. The rage I'd been holding back threatened to explode. I snapped pictures of everything, the birth certificate, the photos, even the album cover, for safekeeping. I wasn't about to confront her without proof. This wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore. It was about exposing the lies she'd spun for years and ensuring she wouldn't walk away unscathed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Lisa. Still at the party. Don't wait up. Love you. The audacity of her words made my jaw clench. Love me? She didn't even respect me. She thought she could humiliate me and get away with it. But this time she was wrong. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. Tonight wasn't the time for confrontation. I needed to play it smart. Lisa had spent years manipulating me, laughing behind my back, treating me like a puppet. Now it was my turn to pull the strings. With the evidence secured, I left her office as it was, careful not to leave a trace of my search. I locked the house and headed to the garage. There was one more thing I needed to do tonight. I opened my laptop and ordered a DNA test kit. If Emily wasn't biologically mine, I needed confirmation, proof I could take to a lawyer, to a judge, to whoever I needed to destroy Lisa's lies. I wasn't just going to walk away from this. I was going to burn the whole house of cards she'd built to the ground. As I hit the confirmation button, my hands steadied for the first time that night. Lisa thought she'd buried her secrets deep, but she had no idea how close I was to unearthing them all. And when I did, she'd regret every single lie. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of fire. Lisa acted like nothing had happened, flitting around the house with her usual confidence, smiling as though the truth she'd unleashed hadn't ripped through my world. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I played my role, the same clueless fool she thought I was. I threw myself into work, keeping my distance from her as much as possible. At home, I responded to her questions with nods and muttered answers, careful not to reveal how much I knew. Every move I made was calculated, every word weighed. The DNA test kit had arrived, and I was waiting for the right moment to use it without raising suspicion. Emily called that Thursday, her voice bright and cheerful as she talked about her classes. Dad, you wouldn't believe it. My professor said my paper was the best in the class. Hearing her call me Dad sent a pang through my chest. I'd spent years pouring everything I had into her future, believing she was my daughter. But was she? The doubt gnawed at me, yet I couldn't let it show. That's great, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile even though she couldn't see me. Keep it up. I'm proud of you. Lisa walked into the room as I hung up the phone, a cup of coffee in her hand. Emily's doing well? She asked casually, as if she hadn't shattered my trust just days ago. She is, I said, keeping my voice neutral. She nodded, sipping her coffee. Good. She deserves it. You've worked so hard for her. There it was again, that tone, that undercurrent of mockery that only I could hear. My hands tightened around the edge of the counter, but I kept my face calm. Yes, I have. Her eyes flicked to me, searching for something, but I didn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, I walked past her, my heart pounding with barely contained anger. That night, when Lisa fell asleep, I put my plan into motion. The DNA test required a sample from Emily, and I couldn't ask her directly without raising questions. But I had an idea. Lisa had saved every memento from Emily's childhood, including a box of baby items stored in the attic. I slipped upstairs, careful not to make a sound. The attic smelled of dust and old memories. I found the box easily, labeled Emily's Firsts. Opening it, I sifted through baby clothes, photos, and hospital bracelets until I found what I was looking for. A lock of hair tied with a pink ribbon. I didn't stop to think about the weight of what I was doing. I took the hair, sealed it in the kit, and packed it up for mailing the next day. By the time I returned to the bedroom, Lisa was still asleep, her face serene, as if she hadn't built her life on a mountain of lies. I stood there for a moment, staring at her. How many nights had I lain beside her, believing she was my partner, my confidant? How many years had I wasted trusting her? But this wasn't the time for emotion. I turned away, my mind already focused on the next steps. The following week was torture. Every time Lisa smiled or laughed, it felt like a dagger twisting in my chest. I avoided her as much as possible, throwing myself into work, waiting for the test results. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, not even my closest friends. This was a battle I had to fight alone. Finally, the email came. I opened it with shaking hands, my breath caught in my throat. The words blurred for a moment before coming into focus. 0% probability of paternity. It was official. Emily wasn't my daughter. I sat there, staring at the screen, the weight of the truth pressing down on me. The betrayal wasn't just Lisa's. It was a theft of my entire life. I had spent years sacrificing everything for a child who wasn't mine. A child Lisa had let me believe was mine. But even as the devastation threatened to overwhelm me, a new feeling took its place. Cold, calculated rage. Lisa thought she could humiliate me, thought she could laugh behind my back, thought she could get away with it. She was wrong. This wasn't over. Not even close. The DNA test kit arrived 3 days later. I was at work when the delivery notification popped up on my phone, and I couldn't focus on anything else after that. Every tick of the clock felt like an eternity. As soon as my shift ended, I sped home, heart pounding, torn between hope and dread. The house was empty when I arrived. Lisa had left a note on the counter. Out with friends. Don't wait up. Dinner's in the fridge. The sheer normalcy of her words made my stomach churn. How could she act so casually, so smug, while my world was crumbling? I shoved the note into the trash and went straight to Emily's room. Her hairbrush was on the dresser, a few strands still tangled in the bristles. I hesitated for a moment, guilt tugging at me. Emily had done nothing wrong. She was innocent in all of this, a victim of Lisa's lies, just like me. But I needed the truth for both our sakes. I carefully removed the hairs and placed them in the test kit envelope. Then I grabbed one of my own combs and did the same. My hands trembled as I sealed the envelope and filled out the paperwork. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart from a distance. When it was done, I dropped the package in the mailbox and stood there for a long moment, staring at the red flag raised against the pale evening sky. There was no turning back now. The truth was on its way, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. But I wasn't just waiting. Waiting was for fools, and I was done playing that role. Lisa might think she was untouchable, but I had spent years supporting her, funding her comfortable lifestyle, sacrificing every part of myself for her and Emily. I knew every detail of our finances, every password, every weak point she had. She had built her life on my hard work, and I would make sure she felt the weight of every crack in the foundation. I started small. Lisa loved her morning coffee from that overpriced cafe she frequented. I canceled the credit card she used for those little luxuries. It wasn't much, but it was a taste of what was coming. Next, I began pulling money from our joint account into a separate one she couldn't access. She hadn't noticed yet. Lisa rarely paid attention to the practical details of our life, too busy basking in the comfort I provided. Every evening, after she went to bed, I sifted through our digital life. Emails, messages, old photos, anything I could find. I was searching for the name, the face of the man who had stolen what was supposed to be my family. The man who had left me raising his child. And then I found it. It was buried in an old email folder labeled work stuff. A thread of messages, bland on the surface, discussing schedules and projects. But then, there was a picture attached to one of the emails. Lisa, sitting too close to a man I didn't recognize, her hand resting on his thigh. The timestamp was clear, 6 months before Emily was born. His name was in the email signature. David Reynolds. A quick search pulled up more information than I expected. He wasn't just some random fling. He was a senior manager at the company Lisa used to work for, the one she had quit just before Emily was born. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Lisa hadn't just cheated on me. She had left that job, left him, and spun her lies into the new life we had built together. I stared at his photo on the screen, rage boiling in my chest. This was the man whose child I had spent years raising. The man who had likely laughed along with Lisa about the clueless fool busting his ass to support their daughter. I closed my laptop and leaned back in the chair, my fists clenched so tightly I could feel my nails biting into my palms. This wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. Lisa had mocked me, laughed at me, and now I had a name, a face to go with the pain. But I didn't lose control. Not yet. Lisa thought she was clever, but she had no idea what I was capable of. She thought I was predictable, easy to manipulate. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. The DNA test was only the beginning. This wasn't just about finding out the truth anymore. It was about making sure Lisa and David felt every ounce of the devastation they had brought into my life. It was about taking back control of a story they thought they had written. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The DNA test results arrived earlier than expected. I opened the envelope in the car, unable to wait until I was home. My hands were steady this time. I already knew what it would say, but I needed to see it spelled out, cold and undeniable. Probability of paternity, 0%. The finality of it didn't hit like a gut punch. It wasn't a shock. It was confirmation. Cold, brutal confirmation of the lies I'd built my life around. I folded the paper carefully, placing it in the glove compartment. Lisa wouldn't know I had it. Not yet. Timing was everything. That night, I acted as if nothing had changed. Lisa was already home when I walked in, scrolling through her phone on the couch. She glanced up with a smile that made my stomach churn. "Hey, you're late," she said casually, as if the woman in front of me hadn't shattered my world. "Yeah, traffic," I replied, forcing a smile. I kissed her cheek, feeling the tension in my jaw as I pulled away. She didn't notice a thing. The next few days were a careful balancing act. I needed to keep Lisa in the dark while I worked out my next steps. The DNA test wasn't enough. I wanted more. I needed leverage, not just to confront her, but to ensure that when I walked away, she'd be left with nothing but the ruins of her lies. I started tracking her movements more closely. Lisa wasn't as careful as she thought. Her routines were predictable, her habits sloppy. She still thought she was in control. One afternoon, I followed her to a cafe on the other side of town. She wasn't meeting her usual group of friends. She was meeting him, David Reynolds. I parked across the street, my heart hammering in my chest as I watched them through the cafe's large windows. She laughed, leaning across the table toward him, her body language intimate in a way I hadn't seen in years. It was as if I didn't exist. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. I wasn't surprised, but seeing it with my own eyes fueled the fire inside me. I pulled out my phone and snapped a few photos, making sure to capture every detail. Lisa's hand on his arm, the way they leaned in close, heads almost touching. The smirk on David's face, like he had won some unspoken competition. But I didn't confront her, not yet. This wasn't the moment for fireworks. I needed her to feel secure, to think she was untouchable. Only then would I strike. The next step was Emily. As much as it hurt, I couldn't leave her in the dark. She deserved to know the truth, but it had to be handled carefully. She was still my daughter in every way that mattered, biology be damned. I wouldn't let Lisa's betrayal destroy Emily's trust in me. The opportunity came the following weekend. Lisa was out again, with friends. Though I knew better now, Emily was home, buried in her laptop, working on a college assignment. "Hey," I said, knocking lightly on her door. She looked up, surprised to see me. I rarely interrupted her when she was studying. "Got a minute?" "Sure," she said, closing her laptop. "What's up?" I sat on the edge of her bed, trying to find the right words. "There's something I need to talk to you about. It's important." Her brow furrowed, and she sat up straighter. "Is everything okay?" "Not exactly," I admitted. "It's about your mom. And about us." Her face went pale. "Dad, you're scaring me." I took a deep breath. "You know how much I love you, right? No matter what. That'll never change." She nodded slowly, her eyes wide and searching. "What's going on?" I told her everything. not the harshest details. I spared her the venom in Lisa's words, the cruel laughter at the party, but enough for her to understand. I showed her the DNA test, the photos of Lisa and David at the cafe. Her hands shook as she held the papers, tears welling in her eyes. "So, he's my father?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Biologically, yes," I said. "But he hasn't been here for you. He hasn't done what I've done. You're my daughter, Emily. You'll always be my daughter." She broke down, and I held her as she cried. It was the hardest conversation of my life, but when she finally looked up at me, her expression had changed. There was anger there now, anger and determination. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I met her gaze, my voice steady. "I'm going to make sure your mother and David regret every choice they made. They wanted to play games with my life. Now, I'll show them what it feels like to lose everything." Emily didn't say anything, but the way she nodded told me she understood. She was with me in this, and that meant more than I could put into words. Lisa's betrayal had fractured our family, but I wasn't going to let it define us. Not anymore. It was time to finish what she started, and I wasn't holding back. Lisa came home late that night, the faint smell of wine lingering in the air as she hung up her coat. I was sitting in the living room, the photos of her and David spread out on the coffee table in front of me. She froze when she saw them, her smile faltering for just a moment before she masked it with feigned confusion. "What's all this?" she asked, her tone light but cautious. I leaned back in the chair, studying her reaction. "Take a guess." Her eyes flickered to the photos, then back to me. "Mark, if this is some attempt to accuse me of—" "Cut the crap, Lisa," I interrupted, my voice cold and sharp. "You've been meeting him behind my back. I know who he is. I know what he is." Her mask cracked, the smugness draining from her face. "You followed me?" she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "Don't act outraged," I shot back. "You're not the victim here. You lied to me for years. You let me sacrifice everything for Emily while laughing behind my back. Don't you dare stand there and pretend you have the moral high ground." Lisa crossed her arms, her jaw tightening. "You don't understand." "No," I snapped, standing up and towering over her. "You don't understand. You thought I'd never figure it out. You thought I'd just keep playing the fool. But guess what, Lisa? I'm done." She tried to speak, but I held up a hand to stop her. "I know Emily isn't mine. I know David is her biological father. And I know you've been lying to me since the day she was born." The color drained from her face, her eyes widening. For once, she had no snappy retort, no quick excuse. She was cornered, and she knew it. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I continued, my voice low and steady, each word hitting like a hammer. "You've ruined this family. You've turned every memory, every sacrifice, into a lie." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time in years, Lisa looked genuinely afraid. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "But you haven't won, Lisa. You think you've gotten away with this, that you can keep living your little fantasy with David while I clean up the mess? Not this time." Her lips trembled, but she quickly recovered, her expression hardening. "What are you going to do, Mark? Walk away? Take Emily and leave? You can't erase the past." I laughed, a cold, bitter sound that made her flinch. "You think this is about walking away? No. This is about making sure you feel every ounce of the betrayal you've put me through. This is about consequences, Lisa, and I promise you won't see them coming." Her bravado cracked again, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She stepped back, shaking her head. "You wouldn't. Try me," I said, my voice icy. "You've underestimated me for years. That ends now." Without another word, I walked past her, heading upstairs. My heart was pounding, but my resolve was unshakable. Lisa thought she had all the power, but she was about to learn how quickly things could crumble when the truth came to light. The next morning, I was up before dawn. Lisa was still asleep, blissfully unaware of what was coming. I'd already made the calls, setting everything into motion. The bank, the lawyer, the private investigator. Every piece of the puzzle was falling into place. By the time Lisa woke up, I was gone. She wouldn't know where I'd gone, or what I was planning. Not yet. But when she did, it would be too late. I wasn't going to just leave her. I was going to dismantle every part of the life she'd built on my back, brick by deceitful brick. She thought I was the fool. She thought I'd forgive, forget, or move on quietly. She had no idea who she was dealing with. Lisa's phone began ringing at exactly 9 that morning. I imagined her frowning at the unfamiliar number, debating whether to answer. When she finally did, I pictured her face falling as the bank representative calmly explained that all joint accounts had been frozen. I timed everything perfectly. By the time she checked her messages, she would find an email confirming the cancellation of her personal credit card, the one she used for her little luxuries and, no doubt, her clandestine meetups with David. I could almost hear her panicked breath as the realization hit her. She was losing control. Meanwhile, I was already at my lawyer's office. David, as it turned out, had more skeletons in his closet than I'd anticipated. The private investigator had uncovered details about him that even Lisa didn't know. Or maybe she did and chose to ignore them. Tax fraud, a previous lawsuit from another affair gone sour, and whispers of misconduct at his old job. He was a walking liability, and I intended to use every piece of dirt against him. As my lawyer reviewed the evidence I'd collected, he gave a low whistle. "This is solid," he said, tapping the stack of documents. "You've got enough here to file for divorce with grounds, go after sole financial control, and even demand reparations for fraud." Fraud. That word sat heavy in the air. Lisa's lies about Emily's paternity didn't just shatter my trust. They had legal consequences. Every penny I had spent under false pretenses was now leverage. The law might not heal the betrayal, but it could help me take back what she'd stolen from me. I nodded, my voice steady. "I want to hit her where it hurts. Financially, emotionally, every single way possible." My lawyer smirked. "She won't know what hit her." By the time I left the office, I felt a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. This wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. This was justice. For every sleepless night, every missed moment with friends and family, every ounce of myself I'd poured into a marriage built on lies. I drove back home to find Lisa pacing the living room, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. Her hair was disheveled, and the usually calm, composed demeanor she flaunted was nowhere to be seen. As soon as she saw me, she rushed forward, her voice frantic. "Mark, what the hell is going on? The bank says our accounts are frozen. My card's been canceled. What did you do?" I didn't flinch. I didn't even raise my voice. I simply walked past her and set my keys on the counter. "I did what I should have done years ago," I said, turning to face her. "I stopped letting you use me." Her face twisted in confusion, anger, and fear. "Use you? Mark, you're being ridiculous. We're married. Don't." I cut her off, my voice sharp enough to make her stop mid-sentence. "Don't stand there and insult my intelligence. You've been lying to me for years. Lisa, you've mocked me, betrayed me, and for what? To keep playing house while you snuck around with David." The mention of his name was like a slap to her face. Her eyes darted away, confirming what I already knew. "You think freezing the accounts and canceling a credit card is going to fix anything?" She spat, her desperation seeping through her anger. "You're not just hurting me. You're hurting Emily too." At that, I felt a surge of rage unlike anything I'd ever experienced. "Don't you dare use her as a shield," I growled. "You've already hurt Emily more than I ever could. You lied to her just like you lied to me, and you're lucky she hasn't walked out of your life completely." Lisa's mouth opened, but no words came out. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. "Do you know what the DNA test said? 0%, Lisa. 0. She's not mine. She never was. And you knew it the whole time." She staggered back as if I'd struck her. "Mark, please," she whispered, her voice trembling now. "I didn't mean." "You didn't mean what?" I snapped. "To steal years of my life? To make me a joke to every person who knew the truth while I was in the dark?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. Not pity, not sympathy, just cold, steely resolve. "Here's how this is going to go," I said, my voice chillingly calm. "You're going to pack a bag and leave. Tonight, I'll send the divorce papers through my lawyer. And if you even think about trying to fight me on this, I'll make sure every dirty little secret of yours and David's becomes public knowledge. Do you understand me?" Lisa stared at me, her lips trembling, but she didn't argue. For the first time in years, she looked powerless. small, defeated. Good. She deserved every second of it. Lisa didn't leave that night. She was too stunned, too shaken by the realization that her perfect world was crumbling beneath her feet. Instead, she retreated upstairs to our bedroom, the room that no longer felt like ours. I didn't stop her. Let her have the night. It would be her last under this roof. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of her muffled voice. She was on the phone, pacing the upstairs hallway. I stayed downstairs, out of sight but close enough to hear fragments of her panicked conversation. Can't believe he's doing this. Everything's frozen. I don't know what to do. She didn't say his name, but I knew exactly who she was talking to. David, her lifeline, the man who thought he'd stolen my family without consequence. I made a mental note to keep digging into him. If Lisa was desperate enough to call him now, it meant he wasn't prepared for what was coming either. I waited until she left for her yoga class before stepping back into action. By now, the private investigator had gathered more than enough evidence to blow up both their lives. David's finances were a mess, barely held together by a string of clever accounting tricks that wouldn't stand up to scrutiny. And Lisa, she was tied to him in ways even she didn't fully understand. I didn't just want them to feel the sting of betrayal. I wanted their worlds to collapse. That afternoon, I visited Emily at her college dorm. She had been distant since I told her the truth, and I didn't blame her. Lisa's lies had cut deep, and she was still processing what it all meant. But I needed her to know that she wasn't alone in this. She opened the door, her eyes tired but softening when she saw me. "Hey, Dad." Hearing her call me, that steadied me. No DNA test could change the bond we shared. She was my daughter, no matter what. "I brought you something," I said, holding up a box of her favorite cookies from a bakery near campus. Her lips curved into a small smile, and she stepped aside to let me in. We sat at her tiny kitchen table, the air heavy with unspoken words. Finally, she broke the silence. "Did you talk to Mom?" she asked, her voice hesitant. I nodded. "I did. It didn't go well." Emily stared at the table, picking at the corner of her napkin. "I don't know how to feel about her, about any of this." "You don't have to figure it out right now," I said gently. "Take your time. But I want you to know that none of this is your fault. You're not to blame for her choices. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Emily, and that hasn't changed." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and she reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "Thank you, Dad, for everything." That moment gave me the strength I needed for what came next. Emily would be okay. She was strong, stronger than Lisa had given her credit for. But Lisa and David? They wouldn't see what was coming until it was too late. The next morning, Lisa's perfect facade began to crack. I made sure of it. First, I sent an anonymous tip to the company David now worked for, complete with detailed evidence of his financial misconduct. It wouldn't just cost him his job. It would trigger a full-blown investigation. His carefully constructed house of cards would collapse, and Lisa would be left holding the pieces. Then I sent a second package to Lisa herself. Inside was a copy of the DNA test results, a few choice photos of her and David from their secret meetings, and a simple note: "You're not the only one who can play games." That evening, she came home early, her face pale and her hands trembling. She slammed the door shut behind her and stormed into the living room where I sat, calmly reading a book. "You sent this?" she demanded, waving the envelope at me. I didn't even glance up. "You'll have to be more specific." "Don't play coy, Mark," she screamed, her voice cracking. "The photos, the test, the whatever this is. What are you trying to do? Destroy me?" I closed the book slowly, meeting her wild eyes with a calm stare. "No, Lisa. You destroyed yourself. I'm just making sure everyone sees it." Her chest heaved as she struggled to find the right words. For the first time, she looked truly afraid. Not just of losing money or status, but of losing the power she thought she held over me. "This isn't over," she said finally, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. "Oh, it's far from over," I replied, my voice as cold as ice. "But when it is, you'll wish you'd never underestimated me." Lisa's lip quivered, but she didn't say another word. She turned on her heel and stormed upstairs, slamming the door behind her. I leaned back in my chair, a small, grim smile playing on my lips. She thought she could fight back, but she didn't realize how many steps ahead I was. David's career was about to implode. Lisa's reputation was unraveling. And me? I was just getting started. The fallout began the very next morning. David's name was plastered all over the local news. Senior executive under investigation for fraud allegations. I had timed the anonymous tip perfectly, ensuring it landed just before the start of his company's quarterly board meeting. By the time the news broke, he was already being escorted out of the building by security, his briefcase swinging limply in his hand, his face pale and drawn. Lisa saw the report too. She stood frozen in the kitchen, her coffee untouched, her phone clutched tightly as the anchor detailed the growing scandal. I watched her from the living room, waiting for her to connect the dots. It didn't take long. "You did this?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't a question. I set my coffee down and turned to face her. "What makes you think that?" Her eyes burned with fury. But there was something else there too, fear. She knew she was next. "What are you trying to prove, Mark?" she demanded, slamming her phone on the counter. "That you're some kind of puppet master? You think ruining David's life is going to fix this? Fix us?" I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. "Fix us? Lisa, there is no us. There hasn't been for years. You killed that the moment you decided I wasn't worth the truth." Her composure cracked, tears welling in her eyes as she leaned against the counter. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then she said the one thing that wiped away any trace of pity I might have had. "You're going to destroy Emily in the process," she whispered. "Is that what you want?" My jaw tightened. "Don't you dare try to pin this on me. You're the one who lied to her, who let her grow up believing a man who wasn't her father cared about her." "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she shouted, her voice trembling. "I didn't think." "No," I interrupted, my voice cold and sharp. "You didn't think. You just acted. You lied, manipulated, and now you're scrambling to clean up the mess you made. But it's too late, Lisa. You don't get to rewrite the ending." She stared at me, her tears spilling over, but I didn't let it affect me. Not anymore. I'd given her enough of my time, my energy, my life. She didn't deserve another second. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed loudly on the counter. The screen lit up with David's name. I raised an eyebrow, gesturing toward it. "Aren't you going to answer? Your knight in shining armor could probably use a pep talk right about now." Her hand hovered over the phone, but she didn't pick it up. Instead, she sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. I stood, my expression unreadable. "What I want, Lisa, is for you to live with the consequences of every choice you've made. And trust me, those consequences are just beginning." I left her there, sitting in the kitchen, staring at the wreckage of her life. I wasn't done yet, but I wanted her to feel the weight of it, to realize that she couldn't talk or cry her way out of this one. That afternoon, I sent the divorce papers through my lawyer. They included everything I'd planned for: full financial control of our assets, a demand for compensation for the years I'd spent supporting Emily under false pretenses, and a clause ensuring she would receive nothing from me after the divorce was finalized. The lawyer assured me it was airtight, that Lisa wouldn't have a leg to stand on in court. The best part? I had included copies of the photos, the DNA results, and the evidence tying her to David's scandal. Lisa had built her life on lies, and now those lies were tearing it apart from every angle. By the evening, she was pacing the house like a caged animal, muttering to herself as she scrolled through her phone. She knew what was coming, but she didn't know how to stop it, and that's exactly where I wanted her. Trapped, desperate, powerless. When she finally noticed me sitting in the living room, she stopped in her tracks. "You're enjoying this," she said, her voice shaking. "Enjoying it?" I repeated, leaning forward. "No, Lisa, I don't enjoy any of this. But I'll tell you what I do feel: vindicated. Because for the first time in years, I'm the one in control." Her face twisted with anger and despair, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. I simply stood, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she demanded. I paused, turning back to look at her. "To make sure the rest of your lies come to light. Sleep tight, Lisa. You're going to need your strength." With that, I walked out, leaving her alone in the house she had turned into a battleground. The night was dark, but for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Lisa thought she'd shattered me, but she'd underestimated the one thing she couldn't control: my will to rebuild from the ashes of her deceit. And this time, the ending would be mine to write. The final piece fell into place 2 weeks later. The divorce papers had been signed. Lisa had no fight left in her. Not after the scandal around David blew up even further. His assets were frozen, his career in shambles, and his name smeared across every news outlet in the state. Lisa tried to reach out to him, of course. She always needed someone to clean up her messes. But this time, no one came to her rescue. I stood in what used to be our home, now an empty shell of the life I thought I was building. The furniture was gone, packed away or sold. The walls, once covered in family photos, were bare. All that remained was the echo of my footsteps as I walked through the house one last time. Emily had decided to stay at college for the summer, needing space to process everything. We had talked, though. She understood my choices, and we promised to rebuild together, slowly, carefully. No lies, no false pretenses. I didn't blame her for anything. She was as much a victim of Lisa's deceit as I was. I locked the front door for the final time and handed the keys to the realtor waiting on the porch. The proceeds from the sale would go toward my fresh start, a small place of my own, far from the memories that haunted this house. Driving away, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. For the first time, my life was mine again. No more sacrifices for people who didn't deserve them. No more pretending everything was fine while carrying the weight of a family built on lies. That evening, I sat by the lake in a nearby park, the sunset painting the water in shades of gold and crimson. I thought about everything that had happened: the betrayal, the lies, the years I could never get back. It was tempting to let bitterness take root, to hold on to the anger that had fueled me through the hardest moments. But as I watched the sun dip below the horizon, I realized something. Lisa had taken a lot from me, but she hadn't taken everything. I still had my integrity. I still had the love of a daughter who saw me as her father, regardless of biology. And I still had time. Time to rebuild, time to find peace, time to create a life that was truly my own. The lesson hit me like a revelation, clear and simple. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how you respond. Holding on to the anger would only let Lisa win, even after everything I had done to expose her. The real victory wasn't in her downfall. It was in my decision to move forward, unburdened by her lies. To the men out there who have given everything for others, only to be betrayed in the end, I'll say this: your worth isn't defined by what others take from you. It's defined by what you choose to rebuild. Don't let bitterness consume you. Stand up, walk away, and build a life that's yours, free from the weight of those who don't deserve your sacrifices. As the last rays of sunlight faded, I stood and walked back to my car, leaving the past behind me. This was the start of something new. Not just a chapter, but a whole new book. And this time I was writing the story. The cold bit through my coat as I stepped up to my front door, my breath curling into the crisp Boston night. The porch light flickered, probably the wind. My fingers, numb from gripping the steering wheel for the past hour, fumbled with the keys. 14 hours in the office, grinding through contract negotiations, trying to close the biggest deal of my career. Christmas Eve. I should have been coming home to the warm glow of the tree, the scent of cinnamon and pine, and the quiet embrace of my wife. Instead, I pushed open the door and walked into something that made my stomach drop. The house was dark. Too dark. The usual string of holiday lights that Vanessa draped over the fireplace every year was missing. No music, no soft hum of the heater running, no sign of life, just silence, stretching long and empty. My boots thudded against the hardwood as I stepped inside. The faint scent of perfume, Vanessa's signature vanilla and orchid, still lingered in the air, but it was already fading, as if the house itself knew she was gone. Then I saw them. 3 small figures, curled up on the living room floor in sleeping bags. A pile of backpacks stacked in the corner. A few stray Legos and a well-worn stuffed rabbit near the coffee table. My brain struggled to process the scene. Who the hell were these kids? A folded note sat on the kitchen counter, stark white against the dark granite. My name scrawled in Vanessa's unmistakable loopy handwriting. Jacob, these are my brother's kids. He had an emergency, so I told him you wouldn't mind watching them for a bit. We'll talk when I get back. Love you. P.S. We're in the Maldives. You're great with kids. Enjoy. My pulse slammed in my ears. Her brother? Vanessa was an only child. I knew her family. I'd met her parents, her cousins. She didn't have a brother. My hands tightened around the paper as I reread it, hoping, praying, that I had misread something. The oldest child, a girl who looked about 9 or 10, stirred. Her big brown eyes fluttered open, blinking drowsily in the dim light. She studied me for a moment, then sat up, rubbing her face. "You must be Uncle Jacob," she said, her voice small but certain. I swallowed the sharp response that threatened to escape. "Who told you that?" She yawned, stretching her arms. "Aunt Vanessa." Of course she did. I inhaled slowly, forcing my tone to stay level. "What's your name?" "Emma," she said. "That's my little brother, Luke." She pointed at a boy, maybe 5 or 6, curled up next to a younger girl who had to be around 3. "And that's Sophie." I nodded, my mind racing. "And where's your mom?" Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. "She's gone." Something in the way she said it made my skin prickle. I pulled my phone from my pocket and scrolled to Vanessa's number. Hit call. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Blocked. A slow, cold realization crept up my spine. She was gone. She had left. Left me, left this mess, left these kids. For him. And she had done it with the confidence that I would just go along with it. That I would pick up the pieces like I always had. I set the note down, walked to the liquor cabinet, and poured myself a drink. Then I made a call that would change everything. I set the glass down, the whiskey burning down my throat, but it wasn't enough to dull the roaring in my head. My hands flexed at my sides as I scanned the darkened house, my mind forcing itself past the initial shock. Focus. I needed answers, not anger. The kids were asleep again, their slow, even breathing the only sound in the room. I stepped away from them, moving toward the stairs. The house felt emptier. Not just in a "my wife isn't here" way, but in a "something is missing" way. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my pulse hammering with each step. Master bedroom. The moment I flipped on the light, I knew. Vanessa hadn't just left. She had erased herself. Her jewelry box, usually cluttered with rings, bracelets, and expensive earrings I had bought her over the years, gone. The nightstand where she kept her favorite book and a framed wedding photo bare. Her perfume bottles, normally littering the vanity, missing. I ripped open the closet door. The left side, once filled with her designer coats and silk blouses, now held only empty hangers swinging slightly as if mocking me. She hadn't packed in a hurry. This wasn't an impulsive trip. She had planned this. I forced my breathing to steady as I turned toward her desk in the corner. Her laptop sat there, lid slightly ajar. I flipped it open. The screen blinked to life, revealing an open Chrome tab. First-class tickets to the Maldives. Purchased 3 weeks ago. Departure this morning. Passenger names: Vanessa Carter Rivers and Bradley Rivers. My stomach twisted at the name. Brad Rivers. Not a brother. A colleague. At least that's what she used to call him when I asked about the late nights. Just a guy from work, babe. She had laughed off my suspicions every time, rolling her eyes like I was being ridiculous. I clenched my jaw and forced myself to scroll. Payment method: joint credit card. My credit card. She had used my money to book a vacation with him. The gaping hole in my chest filled with something sharp, something cold. I exhaled through my nose, shut the laptop, and turned toward the dresser. I knew Vanessa. She wasn't stupid. She wouldn't just leave a digital trail that obvious unless she thought I wouldn't bother looking. Which meant there was more. I started checking drawers. The first few were filled with the usual nonsense: scarves, makeup pouches, loose change. Then, in the bottom drawer, tucked beneath a pile of old receipts, a thick white envelope. I pulled it out and slid my thumb under the flap, my breath slow and controlled as I extracted the stack of checks inside. $10,000 each. The payee name printed on every single one: BR Holdings LLC. BR Holdings. Bradley Rivers. I stepped back, gripping the edge of the dresser as the pieces started locking together in my mind. I knew enough about corporate structuring to recognize what this was. A shell company. A funnel. She wasn't just screwing around with Brad. She was paying him. Or worse, I pulled out my phone and started typing. BR Holdings LLC, Boston. Search. The results loaded in seconds. Commercial real estate development. Offshore transactions. A few lawsuits, nothing damning, but enough to suggest shady dealings. Then, buried in an old finance article from 2 years ago, founder, Bradley Rivers. I snapped a picture of the checks, then another of the laptop screen. I took a deep breath, steadying my grip on the phone. This wasn't just infidelity. This was something deeper, darker, and I had a feeling I was just scratching the surface. I stepped back from the dresser, my pulse slow and deliberate. The air in the room felt thicker, the weight of realization settling in my chest like concrete. Vanessa had lied about everything. The fake brother, the money, Brad. I needed someone who could cut through the bullshit. Someone who had been trained to see through deception and track the untraceable. I needed Carter. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found his name. Isaac Carter, former Army intelligence. Now a private investigator with a knack for pulling at threads until a whole damn sweater unraveled. I hit dial. It rang twice before a familiar voice, deep and laced with amusement, answered. Jacob Carter. Haven't heard from you since the 4th of July when you bet me $50 you could outdrink a Marine. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Carter, I don't have time for your usual routine. That's what you said last time. A pause. Then, a slight shift in his tone. This about Vanessa? My silence was answer enough. Carter exhaled, and I could already hear him moving, probably flipping open his laptop. All right, lay it on me. She left? I said, pacing toward the window, watching the snow swirl under the dim streetlights. Vanished to the Maldives with a guy named Brad Rivers. Carter let out a low whistle. Damn, can't say I'm shocked. I stopped pacing. What do you mean? Jacob, Carter sighed. A year ago, you asked me to check her phone records, remember? My stomach twisted. I remembered. Late nights at the office. Vanessa being weirdly protective over her phone. I had brushed it off back then. Told myself I was just being paranoid. I found something back then, Carter admitted. You didn't want to hear it, so I didn't push. But yeah, Brad's been around a lot longer than you thought. They were in contact months before you even proposed. And they weren't talking about real estate deals. A slow, creeping sensation crawled up my spine. How far can you dig on him? I asked, voice tight. How deep do you want me to go? All the way, and check something else. There are 3 kids here. Carter went quiet for a second. Kids? Vanessa left them. Said they're her brothers. Which is bullshit because she doesn't have one. I glanced toward the living room where the children slept, tangled together like a litter of puppies. I need to know who they are, and why the hell she dumped them on me. Carter didn't hesitate. Send me pics. I'll run facial recognition through some back channels, see what I can pull. Give me a few hours. I ended the call and let out a long breath, my hands tightening into fists before I forced them to relax. This wasn't just infidelity. This was something bigger. I turned back toward the kitchen, my thoughts racing. Keep moving. Keep your head clear. If Vanessa thought she could use me as her cleanup crew, she had severely underestimated me. The scent of cocoa powder filled the air as I stirred hot chocolate on the stove. I wasn't great with kids, but I knew one thing: food was a universal comfort. If I wanted answers, I had to start somewhere. Emma was the first to wake. She sat up groggily, her dark curls falling into her face. Hey, I said, setting a mug of hot chocolate in front of her. She blinked at it, then up at me. You're nice. I exhaled a quiet laugh. I try. Emma took a small sip, watching me over the rim of the cup. Then, after a moment, she said, Aunt Vanessa said you love us. My grip tightened around my own mug. She did, huh? She nodded. She said you'd take care of us while she was on vacation. I kept my face neutral. How long have you known Aunt Vanessa? Emma tilted her head, thinking. A while. She used to come visit us when we lived with Mr. Brad. A slow, heavy pulse pounded in my temples. Where's your mom, Emma? She hesitated. Then softly, she's dead. I swallowed hard, setting my mug down. I'm sorry. Emma nodded absently, but something in her expression made my stomach twist. What was her name? I asked gently. Emma's brows knitted together. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Then she frowned. I don't know. Her voice was small, uncertain, and something inside me went cold. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the heater kicking on. The kids were curled up on the couch, the glow of the Christmas tree casting soft shadows over their sleeping faces. I sat in the dim light of my office, staring at the locked safe built into the wall behind Vanessa's desk. It was tucked behind a framed painting, a cliched hiding spot, but Vanessa never thought much of security. She relied on me for that. The irony wasn't lost on me. I ran my fingers along the edges, pressing gently until I found what I was looking for. A barely perceptible indentation. My thumb traced over the hidden keypad. For digits. I knew her patterns. Birthdays, anniversaries, lazy codes. I tried our wedding date. Denied. I tried her birthday. Denied. I exhaled through my nose, my patience thinning. Then I typed 0407. Brad's birthday. The lock clicked open. The muscles in my jaw flexed as I swung the safe door wide. I had spent years thinking I knew my wife, the woman I had built a life with, and yet, every time I pulled back a layer, I found something uglier beneath. Inside the safe, stacked neatly, were documents. Not jewelry, not cash, paperwork. My fingers moved automatically, pulling the first item into the light. Passport. Not in the name of Vanessa Carter, but Vanessa Rivers. The photo was unmistakable. My wife, or the woman I thought was my wife, staring back at me with a smirk, her dark hair swept into an effortless bun. I flipped to the last page. A visa stamp. The Maldives. Several times. I tossed it onto the desk and reached for the next file. A stack of bank statements. All payments directed to an entity named Rivera Family Trust. The amounts were identical. $15,000 a month. Every single month for the past 4 years. I inhaled slowly, pushing past the rage that clawed at my ribs. For years. That was before we were even married. I reached for the next file and nearly crushed it in my grip. A photo. Vanessa, in a bikini, reclining on the deck of a yacht, a glass of champagne in hand. Beside her, Brad Rivers. His hand was on her thigh, his lips near her ear, frozen in a whisper. I didn't feel the anger anymore, not the way I had earlier. That raw, searing rage had been replaced by something sharper, colder. I stacked the documents neatly and reached into my desk drawer, pulling out a USB drive. One by one, I photographed everything. The passport, the transfers, the photos. If Vanessa thought she could rewrite her life without me, she had underestimated just how thorough I could be. I was about to close the safe when something caught my eye. A small velvet pouch. I picked it up and loosened the drawstrings. Inside was a single key. The engraving was faint but clear. First Federal Bank, Deposit Box 114. A bank box, one I hadn't known existed. I clenched my jaw, my mind already calculating my next move. Vanessa had built a second life behind my back. She had lied, stolen, disappeared, and left me with the aftermath. But if she thought I would sit back and take it, she was about to learn just how much of a mistake she had made. The first light of dawn crept over the Boston skyline as I pulled into the parking lot of First Federal Bank. The streets were still slick from the night's snowfall, the city barely waking up. The car's engine hummed as I sat there for a moment, gripping the small velvet pouch in my lap. I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that passport, that name, Vanessa Rivers. Not Carter, not my wife, not the woman I had built a life with. She had erased herself from me long before she left. I exhaled, forcing my hands to steady as I stepped out of the car. Inside, the bank was nearly empty. A security guard gave me a nod as I approached the counter. "How can I help you, sir?" the teller asked, her polite smile in place. I slid the key across the counter. "I need access to Deposit Box 114. She glanced at the number, then nodded, typing something into her system. "Of course, Mr. Carter. I just need your identification." I handed her my license, keeping my expression neutral. She didn't know that my name had nothing to do with the account she was about to open. "Right this way." She led me to a private access vault, a heavy steel door that required both her key and my deposit box key to open. The door hissed as it unlocked, revealing rows of locked boxes lining the walls. Box 114 was in the middle row. She gestured for me to proceed. "Take all the time you need," she said, stepping back. I turned the key. The lock clicked. I pulled the box out and carried it to the small table in the corner of the room. The fluorescent light buzzed above me as I lifted the lid. Inside was a single folder, thick, crammed with documents. I flipped it open, my breath slow and controlled. The first thing I saw was a corporate registry document. Rivers Global Holdings Ltd., an offshore corporation, based in the Cayman Islands. Owners, Vanessa Rivers, Bradley Rivers. My stomach tightened. I turned the page. Financial statements, wire transfers, hundreds of thousands of dollars moving between shell companies, names I didn't recognize. Then, beneath it all, birth certificates. 3 of them. My fingers froze. I pulled them out one by one. Emma Rivers, Luke Rivers, Sophie Rivers. My throat dried. I flipped to the father's name section. Bradley Rivers. A slow, crushing weight pressed down on my chest. These weren't just some kids Vanessa dumped on me. They were his. I gritted my teeth and kept going, flipping through page after page. The last document stopped me cold. A series of custody agreements. But it wasn't standard paperwork. It wasn't legal. Every single mother had signed over her parental rights to Vanessa. And then, a final note at the bottom of each file. Deceased. My pulse pounded. 3 different women. Each one transferring custody to Vanessa. Each one gone shortly after. Vanessa had been collecting his children, and their mothers had disappeared. I sat there, gripping the edges of the papers. A cold, burning clarity settled in my gut. Vanessa wasn't just cheating. This was something else. Something darker. I pulled out my phone and dialed the one number I knew I could trust. "Jacob?" A groggy voice answered. "Chris," I said, voice like steel. "Get up. I need you to draft a lawsuit." A pause. Then, more alert. "What kind of lawsuit?" I looked down at the papers again. At the money transfers. The falsified documents. The children sleeping in my house, unaware of the nightmare swirling around them. Fraud. I exhaled. Infidelity. Kidnapping. Another pause. Then my lawyer, Chris Nolan, simply said, "Send me everything." I took another slow breath and pulled out my phone's camera. Vanessa had spent years planning this. She had built a second life. Now, I was about to burn it to the ground. The SUV rumbled as I pulled into the parking lot of Cambridge Galleria, the windshield wipers flicking away the last traces of snow. The kids sat quietly in the back seat, bundled in the same worn-out jackets they had arrived in. Emma stared out the window, her expression carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in her small shoulders. I killed the engine and turned to face them. "All right, listen up," I said, keeping my voice light. "I don't know how long you'll be staying with me, but while you're here, you're going to need some proper clothes." Emma shifted in her seat. "We don't have any money," she muttered. I let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, well, lucky for you, I do." Luke perked up. "Can I get a Spider-Man shirt?" "You can get a whole damn Spider-Man wardrobe," I said, pushing open my door. Inside the mall, I led them straight to a department store, grabbing carts and heading toward the kids section. Emma hovered close to Sophie, as if protecting her, while Luke darted between racks, his small fingers grazing everything in sight. I started pulling items off shelves, coats, sweaters, jeans, sneakers, checking sizes and tossing them into the cart. Emma watched me warily, like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. I crouched to her level. "Emma, what's the one thing your Aunt Vanessa taught you about me?" She hesitated, then sighed. "That you're rich and dumb." I went completely still. My fingers tightened around the shopping cart handle, but my face remained calm. "Who told her that?" She glanced away. "Mr. Brad." I exhaled through my nose, forcing down the flash of white-hot rage curling in my gut. I reached into my pocket and clicked on the voice recorder app on my phone, tucking it subtly into the sleeve of my coat. I kept my tone casual. "What else did Mr. Brad say?" Emma hesitated. Then, in a small voice, "That you were too busy with work to notice things. That you only cared about money. That Aunt Vanessa could take whatever she wanted from you, and you'd never fight back. I nodded slowly. And what did Vanessa say? She just laughed. My jaw clenched. I forced myself to smile. Well, I guess we'll just have to prove them wrong, won't we? Emma blinked up at me. What do you mean? I ruffled her hair, my expression easy. Nothing. Just pick out a new jacket. We finished shopping, loaded the bags into the car, and headed to the food court. I bought them burgers, fries, and hot chocolate, watching, listening. Luke, the youngest, was the first to crack. Between bites of his burger, he casually slid a drawing across the table. Look, he said proudly. I picked it up, glancing over the crayon scrawl. It was simple, childlike, 3 stick figures standing in front of a big house. A 4th figure stood to the side, smaller, with X's for eyes. My stomach dropped. Who's this? I asked, tapping the small figure. Luke grinned. Mommy. I went cold. And this? I gestured to the biggest figure, drawn with exaggerated muscles and a bright red tie. Daddy Brad, Luke chirped. He said he's coming back to get us. When you pay. Something inside me snapped. I set the drawing down, my fingers steady. My heartbeat wasn't. I glanced at Emma, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. She knew. She had known all along. This wasn't just Vanessa abandoning them. This was something worse. Brad had left his kids here because he thought I would cave. Because he thought I was a mark. Because Vanessa had promised him I would be. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a slow, measured breath. Then I slid my phone out of my sleeve and hit stop on the recording. Game on, Brad. You just bet against the wrong man. The moment I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed. Carter. Right on time. I answered before the second ring. Tell me you've got something. Carter let out a low whistle. Jacob, you're gonna want to pour yourself a drink before you hear this. Not in the mood for theatrics, Carter. He chuckled. All right, straight to it. Your boy Bradley Rivers? He's not just a 2-bit con man. He's a full-blown financial ghost. Dozens of shell companies, offshore accounts, at least 3 fake identities. And get this, he's on the run. FBI has a sealed warrant out for his arrest. I gripped the steering wheel. For what? Fraud. Money laundering. Document forgery. Carter paused. And here's the kicker, he's tied to some very bad people. You ever hear of the Castellano Group? A sharp pulse shot through my chest. The Castellano Group. Boston's version of the mob. Not the kind that made headlines, but the kind that made people disappear. The same way 3 mothers mysteriously vanished. A slow, simmering rage burned in my gut. You're telling me Vanessa dumped me in the middle of a goddamn mob scheme? I'm telling you, Carter said. That Brad has been cleaning up his messes the same way for years. And you, my friend, are the next sucker on his list. I exhaled slowly. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel as my brain clicked into place. Brad wasn't just extorting me. He was buying time. Time to run. Time to bury the last loose ends. Me. The kids. I clenched my jaw. Send me everything you've got. All the files. Carter hesitated. What are you thinking? I'm thinking. I opened the car door, stepping into the freezing night air. It's time to burn this son of a bitch to the ground. 20 minutes later, I sat at my desk, staring at Brad's entire life in a single folder. Bank fraud, fake passports, a goddamn human trafficking investigation. It was all there. So I did what anyone would do. I gift-wrapped it and leaked it to the press. I drafted the email, attaching every damning document Carter had sent. I sent it to every major Boston news outlet. I sent it to true crime blogs. I sent it to investigative journalists. And for good measure, I signed it, Anonymous Santa. Then I sat back and waited for the explosion. It took less than 2 hours. By the time I poured myself a second drink, the first article had already gone live. Boston developer exposed in multi-million-dollar fraud scandal. FBI on the hunt. Then another. Warrant issued for Bradley Rivers. Ties to organized crime suspected. And then the social media wildfire began. Hashtag Brad Rivers exposed started trending. News anchors speculated on air. True crime podcasters were frothing at the mouth. Then Vanessa called. I let it ring. Then she called again. I let it ring again. Then a text. Jacob, answer me. Now. I smirked. swirling the whiskey in my glass. Finally, I answered. Her voice was shrill, panicked. "What the hell did you do?" I leaned back in my chair. "What's wrong, sweetheart? You sound stressed." "You know exactly what's wrong," she hissed. "Take it down. Now." I grinned. "Why? You don't like your Christmas gift. You don't understand. Brad will kill you for this." I took a slow sip of my drink. "Then he'd better move fast." A pause. Then her voice dropped, desperate now. "Jacob, please. You don't know what you've started." I let the silence stretch, just long enough for her to feel it. Then calmly I hung up, and I let her drown in the fire she started. It didn't take long for the fallout to hit. By the next morning, my lawyer, Chris Nolan, had already filed an emergency injunction. The moment the judge reviewed the files, Vanessa's offshore accounts, the fraudulent transfers, the ties to Brad's criminal web, he didn't hesitate. Her assets, frozen. Her business interests, seized. Her access to the kids, terminated. The hearing lasted less than 30 minutes. I watched from across the courtroom as Vanessa sat stiffly beside her high-powered attorney, dressed in a crisp black suit, her face carefully composed. But I knew her too well. The slight twitch of her jaw, the way she gripped the table's edge. She was unraveling. And when the judge spoke, her entire world collapsed. Given the overwhelming evidence of financial fraud and child endangerment, I am ordering an immediate asset freeze on all accounts associated with Vanessa Carter. Her eyes snapped to mine, wide, disbelieving, including offshore holdings and joint marital funds. A flicker of panic. Chris leaned in beside me, murmuring, "She didn't see this coming. No, she thought she had won. Thought she would play her game, disappear into the sunset with Brad, and leave me to clean up the mess. But now, she had nothing." The judge continued, his voice calm but firm. "Additionally, given the ongoing criminal investigation into Mr. Rivers, I find it necessary to enact a temporary restraining order. Ms. Carter is prohibited from any contact with the 3 minors in Mr. Carter's custody. Full guardianship is granted to Mr. Carter until further proceedings." I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there as Vanessa shattered. She shot to her feet, her mask cracking. "Your Honor, this is completely unfair." Her lawyer yanked at her sleeve, whispering harshly. But she wasn't done. "I have rights. You can't just—" The judge lifted a hand. "Ms. Carter, I strongly suggest you sit down before you lose what little credibility you have left." For the first time since this started, Vanessa looked afraid. Checkmate. Meanwhile, Brad was busy trying to disappear. The moment his face hit the news, he did what all cockroaches do when the lights turn on. He ran. Carter kept me updated in real time. "Guess where our friend Bradley is?" he asked over the phone, amusement in his voice. "Let me guess. Someplace with no extradition." Bingo. He tried to flee the Maldives this morning on a private jet. Problem is, his dumb ass didn't realize Dubai does routine passport checks on wanted criminals. I exhaled slowly, my fingers tapping against my desk. They caught him. Oh yeah, and get this, the second they detained him, guess who else took an interest? I already knew the answer. The Castellano Group. "Yup," Carter said, his grin practically audible. "Seems Brad owes them a lot more than just money." I didn't need to ask what happened next. Dubai had strict policies on international fugitives. Once they processed him, he'd be extradited back to the US. Straight into the hands of the FBI. Straight into hell. By the time I picked up the kids from school that afternoon, everything was official. I had the documents in hand. I had sole guardianship. Emma, Luke, and Sophie were mine. I watched them pile into the car, oblivious to the war I had fought to keep them safe. Emma slid into the front seat, fidgeting with her backpack strap. "So what now?" I glanced at her. Then, with a calm I hadn't felt in weeks, I said, "Now we go home." For the first time, Emma smiled. And for the first time in years, I finally felt like I'd won. I sat in my office, the glow of my laptop screen casting sharp shadows over my desk. Outside, the Boston skyline shimmered with holiday lights. A city moving on while one man's world collapsed. Brad was finished. The courts would chew him up, the feds would bury him, and Vanessa, well, she was already drowning. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Brad Rivers had spent years lying, stealing, and destroying lives. He thought he was untouchable. He thought he could walk away. I was about to make sure that never happened. I opened an encrypted chat window and sent a single message. I need a full debt profile on Bradley Rivers. Offshore, domestic, private. No restrictions. Price is not an issue. The response came in minutes. Consider it done. ETA, 24 hours. By the next evening, I had everything. Brad wasn't just a fraud. He wasn't just a liar. He was a man drowning in debt. And not the kind you pay off with a few forged checks. The Castellano cartel, one of the most ruthless organizations on the East Coast, had fronted him $3.5 million. He never paid it back. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the desk. That kind of debt wasn't forgotten. That kind of debt ended with a bullet. And then I saw it, the leverage I needed. A private lender had bought Brad's cartel debt for pennies on the dollar last year. That lender was sitting on an open claim. The debt was for sale. My lips curled into a slow smile. I sent another message. I want to buy out the Rivers debt. Full amount. No negotiations. 30 minutes later, a confirmation came through. I was now the sole creditor on Brad's $3.5 million cartel debt, which meant I owned him. The moment Brad was deported back to the U.S., the sharks smelled blood. He landed in Boston under heavy federal custody, but the second he stepped out of the transport van, I knew he felt it. That weight, that suffocating realization that no matter what deals he cut, no matter how many charges he beat, he wasn't free. Because the people waiting for him weren't FBI. They were Castellano enforcers. I watched from a black SUV parked across the street. Watched as the blood drained from Brad's face when he recognized them. Two men in tailored suits, standing beside a sleek black Mercedes. Waiting. For him. Brad's breathing hitched. He froze. His eyes darted wildly, looking for an escape route. There wasn't one. His real sentence had just begun. I pulled out my phone and typed a final message. To Bradley Rivers. Message. Christmas present. Live long. If you can. I watched as he yanked his phone out of his pocket, his fingers trembling as he read the message. Then I drove away. Merry Christmas, Brad. It was late. The kind of dead quiet late where the snow muffled every sound, and the whole world felt frozen in time. The kids were inside, warm, safe, for the first time in their lives. I stood by the front window, sipping coffee, watching the street outside. And then I saw her. Vanessa. She looked nothing like the woman I once knew. Her hair was a mess, her designer coat hanging loose over a wrinkled sweater. No makeup, no polished smile. Just a desperate, furious woman standing in the cold, staring at the house she had once controlled. I knew this was coming. She had lost everything, her money, her power, her escape plan. And when people like Vanessa lose control, they self-destruct. She stormed up the driveway, banging on the door. I let her. Then, after a few long seconds, I opened it. What do you want, Vanessa? My voice was calm, steady, controlled. Her eyes burned. You ruined me. I smiled. No, you did that all by yourself. Before she could respond, a small voice cut through the night. Emma. She stood in the doorway behind me, fists clenched at her sides. Her face was red with rage, her body shaking. You lied to us. Vanessa's expression flickered. Emma. Sweetie, you don't understand. No. Emma's voice cracked. You told us Daddy was a great man. You told us he was coming back. But he was a drunk. And now he's dead. And Brad. Her breath hitched. Brad left us. Just like you did. Vanessa flinched. That's not true, baby. Stop lying. Emma screamed. And in that moment I saw it, Vanessa breaking. Not because she cared. Not because she regretted anything. But because for the first time in her life, her words didn't work. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Emma, I said gently, say that again. Emma turned to me, her small hands trembling. She lied to us. About everything. I made sure Vanessa saw the phone in my hand. That she understood exactly what was happening. Her face twisted. You son of a... She lunged. A desperate, clumsy swing. I didn't move. I didn't have to. Her heel slipped on the icy driveway. Her body tilted backward, arms flailing. Then crack. She hit the ground hard. A sharp, ragged scream ripped from her throat. Her wrist was bent at a sickening angle, the bone clearly broken beneath her skin. I crouched beside her, my voice quiet. You just violated a restraining order, Vanessa. Her breathing was fast, panicked, wild. Jacob! The sound of sirens cut through the air. Red and blue lights flashed against the snow. I stood up just as the police car pulled in. 2 officers stepped out, one reaching for his cuffs. Vanessa's eyes went wide. No, please wait. You have the right to remain silent. The cop's voice was flat, unmoved. I watched as they hauled her to her feet, one officer clamping the cuffs around her wrists. She let out a sharp cry of pain as her broken arm jolted. Emma didn't look away. Neither did I. As they shoved Vanessa into the back of the squad car, I leaned in just enough for her to hear me. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Then I shut the door, and I let the past drive away. The auction house was packed. Not with people who cared about the history behind the $10 million yacht docked in the Boston harbor, but with sharks, men and women in sleek suits, all eager to snap up luxury assets from someone else's downfall. Brad's downfall. The yacht had been his pride and joy. He flaunted it, entertained investors on it, seduced women on it. And now, it was mine. Technically, it belonged to one of the offshore accounts I now controlled, a little souvenir from Vanessa and Brad's empire of fraud. I stood in the back of the auction room, arms crossed, watching as the price climbed. 1 million, 1.5, 2 million, sold. The gavel hit the podium with a sharp crack. Just like that, the last of Brad Rivers was gone. The buyer, some finance mogul from New York, grinned as he signed the paperwork. He had no idea the boat had once been used as a meeting ground for criminals and conmen. Didn't matter. I had what I wanted. The funds hit my account by the end of the day. I didn't keep a cent. Instead, I logged in and wired every last dollar, exactly $2 million, to a nonprofit that ran shelters for abandoned and trafficked children. Because Emma, Luke, and Sophie weren't the only ones Brad had left behind. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly as the transfer confirmed. It was over. And then Vanessa tried to kill herself. I got the call late that night. It was her lawyer. Desperate. She took a bottle of pills. Her assistant found her just in time. She's at Massachusetts General. She's asking for you. I didn't respond right away. I just stared out the window at the city lights, phone pressed to my ear. Finally, I said, "Why?" The lawyer hesitated. "Jacob, she's lost everything. Her money, her reputation, her freedom. She has no one left." I let that sit between us. Then I said, "That was her choice." Silence. "She's still your wife," he tried, voice quieter now. She's not." A long pause. Then, more carefully, he asked, "So you're not coming?" I leaned back in my chair, watching the snow start to fall outside. "No." Then I hung up. I had nothing left to say to her. She had spent years making choices. And this was just the consequence. The Christmas tree still twinkled in the corner, its soft glow reflecting off the window panes. The kids were upstairs, asleep, safe. I sat in my chair by the fireplace, a glass of whiskey in my hand, watching the flames dance. I knew he was coming. Brad Rivers was a cockroach. He had wriggled his way out of every corner, escaped every consequence, until now. Now he was trapped. The cartel wanted him dead. The FBI wanted him in chains. And I had made sure that no matter which way he ran, he had nowhere left to go. I just didn't expect him to come to me. The back door shattered. I didn't flinch. Heavy boots pounded against the hardwood as Brad stormed into the house, his breath ragged, panicked. His face was slick with sweat, eyes wild with fear and fury, and in his shaking hands, a gun. "Where is it?" he roared, spittle flying from his lips. "Where's my money, you son of a bitch?" I exhaled slowly, swirling the whiskey in my glass. Calm, controlled. "You look like hell, Brad." His hands trembled as he lifted the gun, leveling it at my chest. "Give me my money." I took a slow sip of my drink, then set the glass down. "I did one better," I said, locking eyes with him. His breathing hitched. I smiled. I sold your debt to the Castellano cartel. I let the words sink in, then added, for $1. Brad's face drained of color. My voice remained steady. They're waiting for you, right now, at the end of my driveway. His grip on the gun shook. You're lying. I raised an eyebrow. Am I? Brad screamed, lunging toward me, finger tightening on the trigger. And that's when I pressed the silent alarm. The house erupted in chaos. Red and blue lights flooded the windows. Sirens wailed, shouted orders, flashlights cutting through the dark. Brad spun toward the door, his panic turning to full-blown terror. FBI, drop the weapon. He hesitated for half a second, too long. Gunfire exploded. A sharp cry of pain. Brad stumbled back, gripping his leg, blood seeping through his pants. He dropped the gun, collapsing against the wall as agents swarmed in. I watched, unmoving, as they hauled him onto his knees. He turned his head to me, pure hatred burning in his eyes. You! I leaned forward, voice low, steady. Merry Christmas, Brad. And then they dragged him away. It should have ended there. But Vanessa wasn't done. The moment she saw Brad's arrest plastered across the news, she cracked. She called the DA, offered everything. The fraud, the offshore accounts, the child trafficking, everything. Not because she wanted justice, but because she thought it would save her. I watched from the courthouse steps as they put her in cuffs. Her eyes found mine. She wasn't angry. She wasn't crying. She just looked empty. She parted her lips like she was going to say something, but the officer shoved her forward. She disappeared into the back of the patrol car. And just like that, she was gone. That night, I tucked the kids into bed. Emma lingered by the doorway, staring at me. What now? She asked softly. I crouched down, resting a hand on her shoulder. Emma bit her lip, hesitating. Are we still your problem? My chest tightened. I pulled her into a hug, holding her close. You're not my problem, Emma. My voice was steady, unwavering. You're my family. She pressed her face into my shoulder, her small frame trembling. For the first time, she let herself believe it. Luke shuffled out of his room, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Are we safe now? I nodded, ruffling his hair. Yeah, buddy, we're safe. He yawned, then wrapped his arms around my waist. Sophie, still half asleep, waddled over and clung to my leg. I looked down at them. 3 kids who had been tossed aside, used as pawns in someone else's game. Not anymore. I scooped Sophie up and kissed the top of her head. Let's go to bed. Tomorrow we start fresh. Emma pulled away just enough to look at me. You mean it? I met her gaze. I swear it. For the first time in years I felt at peace. No more betrayals. No more ghosts of the past. Just us. Just family. And as I shut off the lights and led them upstairs, the snow outside kept falling. Quiet, clean, and new. A fresh start. For all of us.
Hey there. Life is full of unexpected twists, just like the stories we share here. If this story touched you or made you think, consider subscribing to our channel. Every day, we bring you powerful real-life experiences of betrayal, resilience, and the strength it takes to keep going. Don't miss out. Join our community today, where we value truth, courage.
My happiness is more important than your feelings. That's how she said it. Not whispered, not muttered. Said it like a line rehearsed, like a punch she meant to land. The waiter had just set down our anniversary steak. 30-day dry-aged ribeye, medium rare, just like I used to love. Soft piano drifted through the air, candles flickered, and the table next to us had just raised glasses for their toast when she dropped the bomb. She wasn't even angry. That was the worst part. She looked almost bored, twirling the stem of her wine glass like she was waiting for a better conversation partner to arrive. I blinked once. Just once. That was all I allowed myself. She stared at me like I was about to start crying or yelling, maybe hoping for it, maybe thinking I'd grovel, that I'd say, "You're right, baby. I'll do better." But instead, I picked up my knife and sliced through the steak. It was slightly overdone. I chewed, swallowed, nodded, understood, I said, and topped off her wine. She smiled, and dug into her mashed potatoes. No apology. No clarification. She thought the matter was settled. that I had taken the hit and would keep playing my part. The dependable husband with predictable silence. But something in me snapped? No, not snapped. Shifted. See, rage is loud. Clarity is silent. And that night, I didn't feel betrayed. I felt clean. Like someone had finally turned the lights on and showed me the room I'd been living in for years was already empty. She ordered dessert. Said something about the calories being worth it tonight. I paid the bill and even complimented the waiter on the wine pairing. When we got home, she kicked off her heels and started scrolling through her phone, mumbling about needing to confirm flights. I didn't ask what flights. I walked into the office, closed the door, and for the first time in 15 years, opened the folder labeled emergency. It wasn't much, a dusty USB stick, an old list of passwords, a post-it that said contact Jerry if shit hits the fan. Turns out, the fan was already spinning. I backed up every bank statement, every mortgage doc, every insurance policy, car title, and tax return. Anything with both our names on it got duplicated, printed, and locked in my private drawer. At 2:13 a.m., I finished sorting out the first stage, know what we own, where it lives, and whose name is on what. I knew she hadn't checked in years. She left that all to me. That's how she liked it. Made her feel free. I looked through her social media out of curiosity, not suspicion. What I found wasn't shocking, just pathetic. Smiling selfies with captions like manifesting my power era. A photo of her and her old professor, my brilliant mentor, guiding me into the light. He was twice divorced, wore shoes without socks, and had a podcast about vibrational capital or some other silicon bullshit term. She once called him the only man who sees her fire. I kept scrolling. Another post, true partnership is about supporting my dreams, not controlling them. Funny. I was the one paying her dreams credit card interest. She had no idea I was 3 steps ahead now. Not in anger, not in haste, just preparation. I pulled out the binder I used for work receipts and started organizing a new section labeled Exit. Not divorce. Not yet. Just an exit from pretending. The next morning, she left early. Told me she was going to meet a friend at a yoga class. She kissed my cheek. She still did that sometimes. Reflex, maybe. Like people saying bless you when someone sneezes. I waited until the garage door rolled shut. Then I checked the calendar she left open on her iPad. Joshua Tree, Vision Retreat, was blocked out for the weekend after next. For days. Tagged with her professor's initials. No mention of the word husband. Of course not. I brewed a pot of coffee. Fed the dog. Sat at the table she once said felt too masculine. I liked that table. It was heavy. Solid. Oak. And while she texted hearts to her vision guide, I called the bank and asked about refinancing the mortgage. Alone. She wouldn't notice, not yet. She was already packing sundresses and printing quotes about self-love. I didn't care about who she was texting. Not really. I cared that she didn't flinch saying what she said. My happiness is more important than your feelings. No one blurts that on accident. That's something you believe. And once I knew she believed it, I believed her. So I smiled and started preparing for the moment she'd need me. Because when she finally came crawling back, I already knew exactly what I was going to say. 14 years. That's how long I spent playing emotional pack mule while she floated between whims like a helium balloon with a slow leak. Always rising, always drifting, never landing on anything solid. I handled the life stuff, the quiet, boring, unglamorous spine of a functioning household. Broken furnace? I fixed it. IRS letters? I dealt with them. Her mom's hip surgery? I coordinated it, paid for it, even drove the old woman to rehab for 6 weeks straight while my wife needed space for her digital art class. In our house, space was code for abandoning responsibility. She tried careers like people try diets, intense commitment, zero follow-through, and always someone else's fault when it failed. First, it was her Etsy jewelry shop, Boho Soul Energy, complete with repackaged Amazon beads sold at crystal healing markups. I helped her set up a workspace, built her a custom table, even stayed up late photographing pieces because light matters, babe. 6 months in, she declared it too restrictive. Then came the essential oils MLM. I bit my tongue while she hosted workshops with names like Unlocking Your Inner Goddess through Citrus. I bought supplies, drove boxes to the post office. She made a whopping $97 and spent $2,400 on inventory. The third act was her creative doula coaching service. Don't ask me what it meant. I still don't know. Something about holding space for artists to birth their truest projects. I once made the mistake of asking what the actual business model was. She blinked at me like I'd just kicked her cat. You just don't believe in me. That one hit different. Because for the first time, I realized I didn't. Not anymore. Not after refinancing the car to cover her coaching certification. Not after maxing out our joint card, again, to pay for her client-led summit in Denver, where she came back with a tote bag and a $900 leather-bound journal she never used. I didn't say a word when I paid off her card the first time. The second time, I paused, but still did it. The third time, I told her no. She cried, said I was limiting her light, said I didn't understand what it's like to be an expansive being stuck in a linear world. I told her I understood interest rates and minimum payments, and what it meant when her card got declined trying to buy almond milk. She stormed out, probably posted something cryptic on her wellness page about toxic masculinity and energy vampires. It wasn't the money that wore me down. It was the delusion, the permanent adolescence, and maybe worst of all, the applause she expected for doing the bare minimum. Once, after helping her set up a Zoom call for her Birth Your Genius workshop, she looked at me like I was her intern, said, "Thanks, sweetie. You're such a good support person. Support person. Not husband. Not partner. Not even friend. Support person." That night, I sat in the garage alone, staring at a spreadsheet I'd made of our finances. Do you know how humiliating it is to realize you've become the bank for someone who thinks they're the CEO? 14 years of, can you just? 14 years of, this is temporary, I swear. 14 years of, you're lucky I'm not one of those women who just wants a paycheck. And yet she took the paycheck. Every damn time. The roof didn't collapse because of one storm. It sagged, day after day, board by board, until one night, I realized I was living under rot. She never once asked how my day was. Never asked what I wanted. Because everything was about her journey. Her light. Her expansion. Her next big thing. I was the backdrop. The wallpaper in her performance of enlightenment. So when she said, "You just don't believe in me," I didn't argue. Because she was right. I didn't. I believed in balance. In respect. In reality. And now that I saw her clearly, I started to believe in something else, too. Getting out. Quietly. Efficiently. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to plead. I was going to let her keep chasing meaning, while I slowly reclaimed mine. It started with a green smoothie and a smirk. She slid the glass across the kitchen island and said, "Guess what? I'm starting something real this time." I took a sip. It tasted like kale and moral superiority. She was practically glowing. Not from the smoothie. From the validation she clearly expected. I played along. Oh yeah. She grinned. I'm partnering with someone brilliant. He's a total visionary. He used to be my professor, remember Dr. Lowell? Ah, Dr. Lowell. I remembered. Salt and pepper beard, smug grin, open shirt at alumni mixers. The kind of man who said things like authenticity is currency while subtly ogling your wife's collarbone. Divorced twice, last I heard. Hosted TEDx talks about the spirituality of startups. Good for you, I said, nodding. She leaned in, animated. It's a wellness platform. Female-led. Investor-backed. Real capital this time. And he gets it. He sees the potential in me. She used to say that about a dog walking app. And an organic candle subscription. But now it was a platform. Same dream. Shinier wrapper. She added, he's giving me full creative control. Branding, messaging, everything. I asked what her role was. I'm the soul, she said. She didn't notice the pause that followed. Or maybe she did, and liked it. Later that night, I watched her stage a selfie on our front porch, carefully angled to blur out the cracked tile she still hadn't noticed since January. Caption, big moves. Big energy. Big alignment. Hashtag alignment had 2 in S. I didn't correct her. A week later, she packed a leather tote and headed out to minter meetings. I knew she was seeing Dr. Lowell again, this time in a private co-working space downtown. She said it helped her get into a higher frequency zone. I said nothing. But that night, I sat down with our laptop, the one she never bothered to log out of, and quietly downloaded every joint account statement. Mortgage records. Titles. Old shared documents. Anything that showed what was ours. Or rather, What was mine? I organized it into folders: property, assets, shared debts, her accounts. Most of the ones in that last folder were already read. Her professor had apparently convinced her to open a line of credit to show commitment. She transferred $4,800 from our joint savings without telling me. I found the receipt in her inbox, tucked between a welcome email from Align Space and a pitch deck labeled Phase 1, Monetizing Vulnerability. Monetizing vulnerability. The phrase stuck to me like the aftertaste of that damn smoothie. A few days later, I drove past the co-working building. Curiosity, not suspicion. Or so I told myself. There she was, standing in the glass-paneled lounge, laughing too hard at something Dr. Lowell was saying. He touched her arm. Too familiar. Too casual. She wore the scarf I gave her on our 10th anniversary. I didn't confront her. Didn't even slow the car. Back home, I printed another set of statements. Scanned the old prenup. Highlighted the clause about business liabilities acquired independently. She'd forgotten that part. Or never read it. She was busy taking selfies next to potted succulents in Lowell's office. One showed her holding a coffee mug that said, "Manifest like a motherfucker." Caption, "Building empires with Soul Fam." I stared at it for a long time. Then, for the first time in our marriage, I set up a password-protected document she couldn't access. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I finally understood I needed to prepare for the day she'd ask me to fix what she broke. Because that day was coming. And when it did, I'd be ready. With receipts. She left on a Thursday. Kissed me on the cheek like I was a dog she'd trained not to follow her to the airport. For days, she said, hoisting her beige carry-on like it was a suitcase full of destiny. I need this. It's a chance to recalibrate. There's going to be breath work, cacao ceremonies, energy mapping. It's a founder's summit, not just a retreat. I nodded. Said, enjoy. She wore white linen and carried a journal wrapped in vegan leather. The dog sniffed her ankle. She didn't pet him. I watched from the porch as the Uber pulled away, a hand on the railing she always said she'd get around to repainting. The silence was immediate. The kind of silence you don't notice when someone's always narrating their process of becoming. It wasn't peaceful at first. Just still. And in that stillness, something ancient inside me stretched. The part of me that had been asleep. Smothered beneath diffuser oils and TED Talk quotes and Instagram posts about rising above masculine density. I didn't do anything dramatic. No whiskey, no phone calls, no secret plans. I just existed. Fed the dog. Sat in the garage with an old record spinning. Listened to the rain start and stop. Ate leftovers in peace. And for the first time in years, allowed my mind to replay the footage I'd been fast-forwarding for too long. The time she forgot my birthday because she was in launch mode. The time she laughed, actually laughed, when I cried at my mother's funeral. Said, "You're so emotional. You should talk to someone about that." The time I found out she'd canceled my physical therapy sessions because she needed the card to book a last-minute sound healing workshop. She said, "Your shoulder will be fine," but my soul was cracking. I remembered the grocery lists I wrote, the plumbing bills I paid, the Christmas presents I bought for her nieces because she said she was burnt out. Self-care, to her, always meant self-evacuation from responsibility, from planning, from partnership. It was my job to hold the world together while she explored the inside of her authentic voice. By Saturday, something inside me settled. I stopped fantasizing about her changing. That was the moment I realized I no longer hated her. You don't hate paper dolls for being flat. You don't hate wind for being inconsistent. You just stop trying to build anything with them. On Sunday night, she texted, "Unreal breakthroughs. I'm buzzing. Can't wait to share." I didn't reply. On Monday, she returned. Her face looked newer somehow, sun-kissed and smug. She carried crystals in her bag now. Spoke slowly, like she'd upgraded her vocal cords. "I feel aligned," she said, setting down her bags. Like, recoded. I was sipping coffee in the kitchen. I looked up. No smile. "Glad you found what you needed," I said. She paused, tilted her head, maybe expecting more. Applause, maybe. Awe. She didn't get it. She got the same silence I'd had for 4 days. And she looked confused. Like maybe something was different. Something was. Not in her. In me. I'd spent 4 days remembering everything she made me forget. Now I was ready to start forgetting her. It started with the light in the fridge. Burned out on a Tuesday. I opened the door, saw the bulb flicker, then nothing. A month ago, I would have replaced it before she even noticed. Driven to the hardware store, found the right model, maybe even picked up almond milk while I was at it. Instead, I closed the door and walked away. The next day, the kitchen sink started dripping. Rhythmic. Predictable. Like a ticking clock she'd never hear over her phone calls and Spotify mantras. I left it alone. Her mail piled up on the counter. Bills unopened. Late notices in bright red font that she mistook for marketing. I said nothing. She was busy these days, buzzing around in oversized cardigans, spouting words like activation strategy and community-centric monetization. I sat at the table while she rehearsed her pitch out loud. I see the brand as a holistic ecosystem, she explained once, pacing barefoot across the room. Not just a product, but a movement. Conscious, inclusive, scalable. I nodded. What's the product again? She blinked. Still evolving. But it's definitely consciousness forward. Right. She spent hours on Zoom with her new creative team, most of whom were people she met at the Arizona retreat. One of them had dreadlocks and a crypto startup. One called herself a branding intuitive. Another cried on camera when Mercury went into retrograde. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash, except the car was a vision board and the crash was fully self-inflicted. Meanwhile, the water bill was overdue. The internet bounced once before I paid it, silently, one last time. Then I stopped. Stopped reminding her to check the insurance renewal. Stopped adjusting the thermostat she always forgot to reprogram. Stopped answering when she shouted from the other room, "Did you pay the?" I let things sit. Decay has a smell, but it's subtle, like a dying plant in a too fancy ceramic pot. You don't notice it right away. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw her frowning at the coffee machine. "It's blinking something weird," she said. "Probably wants to be descaled," I said, without moving. She stared. "Are you going to?" "Nope." She made a face. "Why not?" "I'm on a self-care journey," I said. "Just trying to stay aligned." She didn't laugh. Neither did I. A week later, she came to me barefoot, holding a printed document in a lavender folder like it was a peace treaty. "I need your help," she said. "Just $12,000. Bridge money for manufacturing. We've got interest from a boutique distributor, but I need to make a down payment to secure the supplier." I looked up from the couch. 12 grand. It's an investment, and you'll be supporting something with real impact. I asked, "What are you manufacturing?" She hesitated. "It's still in refinement, but it's a sensory mindfulness kit. For women." "What's in it?" "A deck of affirmation cards. An aromatherapy bracelet. A hand-carved grounding stone from Oaxaca. We're still finalizing the branding." I took a breath. She smiled. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't huge." "No," I said. The smile dropped. "Sorry." I said no. She blinked. "But you always, eh?" "I don't anymore. But this is important to me. So was my mom's funeral. You were AirPods during the eulogy." She stared at me, stunned, like someone just turned the mirror around. "You're being selfish," she snapped. And for the first time in our marriage, I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "I think I finally am." She stood there, dumbfounded, holding that lavender folder like it still meant something. I turned back to the TV. Not because I didn't care. Because I finally didn't. The fridge light was still dead. The sink still dripping. But me? Fully operational. Just no longer in service. She came back through the front door like a woman walking out of a car crash, limping, glass-eyed, still trying to pretend she hadn't seen it coming. The scarf was gone. The glow was gone. The manifesting optimism had deflated into something more brittle. She didn't take off her shoes, didn't mention the airport, didn't kiss the dog. Just dropped her bag in the hallway and started pacing like the floor owed her answers. "I need to talk," she said, voice strained. I stayed seated at the kitchen table. Coffee, half full. Paper open. Light from the window catching the slow drip of the faucet she never fixed. She didn't sit. Just hovered. It's a temporary thing, okay?" She started, talking fast. "The supplier we were working with, Carlos, he pulled out. Apparently Lowell never finalized the agreement, and now the manufacturer wants a down payment up front." Lowell? Of course. Dr. Soul Alignment had packed up his ring lights and moved on to the next batch of wide-eyed founders. No forwarding address. Just a few emails that bounced back and a podcast episode about embracing detachment. She continued, faster now. It's not like the brand failed. It's just early friction. Normal startup stuff. But the issue is, I used my personal info to file the LLC. And the supplier invoices are in my name. All of them. I let her speak. I wanted to see where she'd draw the line between desperation and accountability. She finally stopped pacing, looked me dead in the eye. I need your help. I need you to co-sign a small loan. Just $25,000. Short term. I've already drafted a plan. This is temporary. She placed a paper-clipped packet in front of me. Like we were still partners. Like this was still her home. It had my full name on the line beneath hers. Pre-filled. I looked at it, then up at her. She was shaking. Not from fear. From the sheer panic of watching the fantasy cave in and realizing the safety net was no longer under her. I took a long, slow sip of coffee. Let the silence stretch. Let it hang between us like fog that wouldn't lift. Then, calmly, I said, I thought your happiness was more important than my feelings. The line landed like a stone in her stomach. I saw it. That flicker in her eyes. The moment she remembered the dinner, the candlelight, the smug way she'd said those exact words like they were gospel. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just went quiet. For the first time in what felt like years. No comeback. No lecture. No, you're overreacting. Just stunned, paralyzed silence. And in that quiet, I watched it all unravel in her head. Lowell's ghosting, the failed launch, the bills she hadn't opened yet. The life raft she thought I was still inflating behind her back. It was gone. I folded the loan document in half, slowly, and slid it back toward her. I'm not co-signing. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Not out of spite, I added. Out of policy. She looked confused. My new policy, I said, rising from the chair, is to never finance people who treat me like a burden. Then I walked past her. Left her standing there, in her overpriced airport boots, gripping the paper like it could still save her. It couldn't. Her professor had vanished. Her investors stopped replying. And the one man who always said yes finally didn't. She came into the room like a cornered animal. No tears now. No begging. That mask had slipped. Just raw, indignant rage. You think this makes you a man? She snapped. Letting me sink while you sit there playing Zen monk with your damn coffee? I didn't answer. I'd found silence to be the most efficient mirror lately. Her voice sharpened. This is my home too. Ah, there it was. The line she thought would reset the board. She expected the word home to carry weight, to anchor her back into relevance. As if years of absentee partnership could be wiped clean with a shared address. I turned toward the side drawer, third one down, the one she never opened. The same one where I kept copies of the water heater warranty and the insurance claim from when her nephew broke the back porch railing. I pulled out a manila folder, unsnapped it, laid the deed flat on the table. She didn't understand what she was looking at. So I pointed. There, I said, tapping her signature. Dated 8 months ago, during the refinancing. Her brows furrowed, then lifted, then crumpled into confusion. You said that was for a better interest rate, she whispered. It was, I said, and a simplified title. You tricked me. No, I replied evenly. I handed you the paperwork. You didn't read it. You signed it because you were late for your Reiki appointment. I slid the folder across the table toward her. Look closely. Your name's not on the deed. Not anymore. She stood there, blinking. She looked like someone who just got informed the parachute was decorative. I was building a brand, she said, voice cracking. And I was maintaining a life, I replied. You did this on purpose. I stared at her, then shrugged. It's not revenge, I said. It's just paperwork. That's what undid her. Not shouting, not gloating, just calm, documented fact. You're a monster, she hissed, backing away like I had physically struck her. Funny, coming from the woman who once told me emotional needs were low vibration and grief was a choice. Now, she was vibrating at a very different frequency. I picked up my mug. Still warm. You built your life on feelings, I said. I built mine on structure. That's the difference. She stormed down the hall, muttering to herself. Maybe hoping I'd chase her. Maybe expecting me to shout something dramatic so she could reframe the story for her followers. I didn't. I walked out the back door instead. Sat on the porch. Listened to the wind catch in the trees. For the first time, that house, my house, felt quiet again. Not because she was gone. Because she no longer had legal permission to stay. She had thought her name meant permanence. She forgot I was the one who always read the fine print. By morning, her fury had curdled into desperation. She followed me around the house like a ghost in yoga pants, bleeding every emotionally manipulative tactic she'd banked on for years. I didn't know what I was signing. You could have warned me. Don't throw away 14 years over a bad quarter. I kept the coffee pot between us like a priest holds a cross to ward off demons. She circled, pacing in her own panic spiral, mascara smeared at the corners like the mask had finally begun to melt. Then came the tears. Full performance mode. Trembling hands, knees half buckled like her grief had mass. This isn't who I am, she choked out, voice hoarse. You know me. I said nothing. She collapsed into a chair and stared up at me with those doe eyes that she'd once used to talk waiters out of drink charges. Please, just talk to me. Still nothing. So she pivoted. Trauma time. I've been through a lot, okay? My mom always made me feel small. Lowell saw something in me, and I thought maybe if I built something of my own, I'd finally feel worthy. She looked at me like that was supposed to be redemptive, like using childhood neglect as a debit card would suddenly wipe out years of emotional overdrafts. When that didn't land, she pivoted again. She crossed the room slowly, purposefully, letting her robe fall just enough off one shoulder to show skin she once claimed was for alignment, not objectification. Her fingers grazed my wrist. I still love you, she whispered, like it was currency. I didn't flinch, didn't recoil, didn't even blink. I just reached to the side and slid a manila folder across the table toward her. She paused, puzzled, then opened it. Inside, receipts, transfers, wire confirmations, all of it. Every dollar I'd shelled out for her spiritual empires and product-less startups. Her aromatherapy course, her healing retreat in Sedona. The time I paid 3 months of rent on her co-working space, even though she mostly used it to record podcast episodes with 6 listeners. There was a printout of the joint credit card summary with every charge highlighted. Her Whole Foods binges, her $400 ethically sourced hoodie, her $2,700 personal branding coach. Every debt I'd cleared, every invoice I'd covered, every bill she forgot existed because she was too busy building soul equity. She flipped through the pages, slower now. And at the bottom, a note in my handwriting. Just one line. You said your joy mattered more than my pain. Now I finally agree. She didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't throw it across the room like I expected. She just stared at it. And in that silence, something inside her broke. Not loudly, not theatrically, just snapped. Quietly. Like a paper fortune cookie you already know the message inside of. She sat down, realized she had no cards left, no leverage, no house, no savings, no husband still willing to fund her delusions, and worst of all, no audience. I stood up, walked out of the room, and left her sitting there, surrounded by the very math she'd spent a decade pretending didn't apply to her. She left with 3 suitcases and a suitcase-sized ego. Told mutual friends I'd emotionally blindsided her, that I'd manipulated paperwork behind her back, that I was punishing her success because I couldn't handle a powerful woman stepping into her light. And for the first few days, they believed her. Her circle of wine moms and Reiki consultants flooded her feed with heart emojis and affirmations. You deserve better. Stay in your power, sis. He was intimidated by your magic. One even dropped off a crystal at her Airbnb to realign her frequency. But then came the receipts. Not mine, hers. Or rather, the absence of mine. No co-signed loan. No rescue funds. No alimony. Our prenup made sure of that. No house. Just late fees, overdrafts, and a business account in collections. Turns out, empowerment tweets don't pay invoices. And when the brand's website went offline and her investors ghosted her faster than her mentor did, people started asking questions. Quiet ones, but persistent. Even her closest friend, Maya, the one who once told me I was too controlling for not letting her borrow our car for a weekend business immersion, stopped replying to her Instagram stories. Because math doesn't care about self-actualization. She went silent online after that. The Airbnb turned into a weekly rental, then a room at her cousin's place in Pomona. She messaged me 5 days after moving out. I didn't mean it like that. That was it. No subject. No explanation. Not even a question mark. I saw the preview on my lock screen and didn't bother opening it. Just swiped it away like spam. 3 days later, another message. This time a photo. Our anniversary dinner, last year. The same restaurant. Same booth. Same candlelight. She'd captioned it. I thought we were happy. I didn't open it either. Just dragged the notification to the trash and watched it disappear. I didn't feel satisfaction. Didn't feel pity. Didn't feel anything. And that was the real victory. She had spent 14 years using noise to make herself feel relevant. Voice memos, affirmations, footnotes of borrowed wisdom. And now, there was nothing. Just silence. Not angry silence. Not strategic silence. Final silence. The kind that doesn't beg or explain. Just deletes. It was a rainy Thursday. The kind where the streets feel like they're exhaling something heavy. The coffee shop was half empty. The kind of quiet that amplifies every clink of a spoon, every nervous foot tap, every heartbeat pretending it isn't waiting for something. She picked the table by the window, of course she did. She always needed light, even when her world was collapsing. When I walked in, I saw it all at once. The puffiness under her eyes, the overcompensating lipstick, the borrowed scarf that didn't quite hide the unraveling. 3 months had passed since I'd last heard her voice. Now, here it was again, trembling just beneath the surface of her smile. "Thank you for coming," she said, too fast. I didn't know who else to call. I sat across from her, placed my phone on the table. Face down. She launched into it immediately, no preamble, no apology. "It's a new opportunity. A real one. A former client of mine is doing a boutique wellness line, clean beauty stuff, and they need someone to help manage the rollout. I've already done mock-ups. I have a deck. I just need backing to get in on the ground floor." I sipped my coffee. Let her words swirl and fizzle like steam. "I wouldn't ask," she said, "if I didn't know this time is different." She slid a paper across the table. A loan form. Her name already printed. My signature line waiting like a loaded gun. "Just co-sign it," she said, smiling that shaky smile. "I'll rebuild. I swear." She said it like it was a promise. Like she hadn't already burned down the house, blamed the smoke on my insecurities, and tried to sell the ashes as incense. I looked at her. Not her makeup, not the polished desperation her. And what I saw wasn't tragic. It was familiar. A pattern that always ended with me footing the bill while she renamed the mistake growth. Only this time, I'd grown too. And for once, I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. I stood slowly, leaving the untouched loan form between us like a museum relic of who I used to be. She blinked up at me. "Wait, you're not even going to think about it?" I looked at her one last time and said it plainly. I finally chose my happiness too. No sarcasm. No cruelty. Just fact. She opened her mouth, maybe to plead, maybe to protest, but I was already walking toward the door. Outside, the rain had stopped. I didn't turn back. Not once. But if I had, I imagine I would have seen her still sitting there, staring at that empty signature line like it held the last thread of a story she thought she could rewrite. She had said her happiness mattered more than my pain. I simply agreed and smiled.